I never imagined my own daughter would erase me from Thanksgiving. No invitation, no explanation. But when I found out who she did invite, I realized this wasn't an accident. It was a message. And what I did next changed our family forever. Before we continue, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and comment below if you believe parents deserve respect no matter what. Your support helps these real-life stories reach the people who need them most. Thanksgiving had always been my holiday. For over 20 years, I cooked the turkey the same way, brined overnight, butter under the skin, rosemary and garlic tucked just right. The house would smell warm and familiar by 10 in the morning, and by noon, someone would always sneak into the kitchen asking when dinner would be ready. Usually my daughter, Emma. That year, I noticed something was different by the first week of November. No texts, no calls asking what time dinner would be. No "Mom, are we doing Thanksgiving at your place again?" At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. Emma was busy. She had a demanding job, a fiancé, a life of her own. I didn't want to be the clingy mother who needed constant reassurance. Still, a quiet worry settled in my chest. By mid-November, my neighbor Carol asked me, "So what time should I come over on Thanksgiving this year?" I froze. "Oh," I said quickly, forcing a smile. "We're still finalizing plans." That night, I checked my phone again. Nothing from Emma, not even a casual hello. So I did something I rarely did. I called her. She answered on the third ring, sounding distracted. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound normal. "I was just calling to see what your plans are for Thanksgiving." There was a pause, not a technical pause, a human pause. "Oh," she said slowly, "we're doing something small this year." Something small. I waited. With who?" I asked. Another pause, longer this time. "With Dad and Karen." She finally said. My grip tightened around the phone. Karen. Her stepmother, the woman my ex-husband married 6 months after our divorce, the same woman he swore was just a friend while we were still married. "And me?" I asked quietly. Silence. I felt my heart start to pound. "Mom," Emma said, her voice suddenly cautious, like she was walking through a minefield. "I didn't think you'd want to come. It might be awkward." Awkward. I swallowed hard. "So, I'm not invited." She didn't say no. She didn't say yes either. She said, "I just thought it would be easier this way." Easier for who? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just said, "I see." We ended the call shortly after. She said she had to get back to work. I said okay. When the line went dead, I sat there staring at my phone like it had betrayed me. My own daughter had planned Thanksgiving. She invited her father. She invited the woman who helped break our family apart, and she didn't invite me. I replayed the conversation over and over, wondering where I went wrong. Had I been too strict when she was growing up, too emotional after the divorce, too honest about the pain her father caused? Or was this something else entirely? Later that evening, I checked social media, something I usually avoided. There it was. Emma had posted a photo from a Thanksgiving planning night. The table was set, the decorations were already out, and standing behind Emma, her arm around my daughter's shoulders, smiling like she belonged there, was Karen. The caption read, "So grateful for family, can't wait for Thanksgiving this year." I felt sick. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This was planned, thought out, and I was intentionally excluded. I spent the next few days moving through life like a ghost. At work, I smiled when people asked about my holiday plans. At the grocery store, I walked past the turkeys without stopping. Every night, I told myself not to take it personally, but how could I not? I was her mother. I carried her for 9 months. I stayed up through fevers, nightmares, heartbreaks. I sat in the front row of every school event while her father showed up late, or not at all. And now, somehow, I was the one left out. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I received a message from Emma. "Hey Mom, just wanted to let you know, dinner will be around 4 p.m. on Thursday." That was it. No apology, no invitation. Just a schedule for a dinner I wasn't attending. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not rage. Clarity. I finally understood something I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't about Thanksgiving. This was about choices. And if my daughter had chosen to erase me quietly, then I needed to decide what I was going to do next. I looked around my empty house, the quiet kitchen, the unused dining table, And for the first time, instead of feeling abandoned, I felt resolve, because if they thought uninviting me meant I would just disappear, they had no idea what was coming. The days leading up to Thanksgiving felt heavier than I expected. It wasn't loud grief. It wasn't dramatic sadness. It was quiet, the kind that sits beside you on the couch, follows you from room to room, and whispers questions you don't want to answer. I stopped sleeping properly. Every night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying memories I hadn't thought about in years. Emma's first Thanksgiving as a baby, when she smeared mashed potatoes all over her face. The year she insisted on helping me cook and nearly set the kitchen towel on fire. The last Thanksgiving before the divorce, when her father barely spoke to me and left early, claiming he had work to finish. Back then, I thought the hardest part was already over. I was wrong. On Monday, I decided to clean the house, not because anyone was coming, but because sitting still felt unbearable. I washed dishes that were already clean. I folded towels that didn't need folding. I reorganized cabinets just to hear the sound of movement. At the back of one cabinet, I found the Thanksgiving serving platter Emma had made in elementary school. It was misshapen, painted with crooked pumpkins, and her name scratched into the clay. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for the first time since that phone call. Not loud sobs, just silent tears that slid down my face as I traced the uneven letters with my thumb. How did we get here? Later that afternoon, my sister called. "Are you coming to Emma's this year?" she asked casually. My stomach dropped. "What?" "Oh," she said, surprised. "I assumed she invited you. She told me Dad and Karen were hosting with her." Hosting. So now, it wasn't just a dinner, it was a family event. "I'm not invited," I said quietly. There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, not invited?" "She didn't ask me to come." My sister was silent for a moment, then said, "That doesn't make sense. You're her mother." I almost laughed. That's what I thought too. The call ended awkwardly. She said she would talk to Emma. I told her not to. I didn't want pity. I didn't want forced invitations. I didn't want to sit at a table knowing I was only there because someone felt guilty. On Tuesday, I ran into Karen. It was purely accidental, or so it seemed. I was at the grocery store picking up a few essentials, trying to get in and out as fast as possible, when I heard a voice behind me. "Oh, hi." I turned around. There she was, smiling brightly, holding a basket filled with Thanksgiving ingredients, cranberries, cream, a frozen pie. Karen looked comfortable. Happy. Double quotes. "Hi," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Are you getting ready for Thursday?" she asked cheerfully. I nodded slowly. "Something like that." She tilted her head. "Emma told me she talked to you." My chest tightened. "She did?" "Yes," Karen said. "About Thanksgiving?" And I asked. Karen smiled in that careful way people do when they think they're being kind but are actually being cruel. She said, "You understood?" Understood? Looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who slid into my life while my marriage was falling apart. The woman who now stood in front of me, acting like this situation was normal. "I understand a lot of things," I said calmly. She shifted slightly, clearly unsure how to respond. "Well," she said lightly, "I hope you still have a nice day." I watched her walk away, her basket full, her steps confident. I left the store without buying anything. That night, Emma texted me. "Hey Mom, Aunt Lisa mentioned you sounded upset. I hope everything's okay." I stared at the message for a long time, before replying. "I'm fine." 3 words. She responded almost instantly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought this year should be simple." Simple. I typed, deleted, typed again. Simple for who? The message sat there as read for several minutes before she replied. "I don't want drama on Thanksgiving. Drama. That word hit harder than I expected. Was my presence drama? Was my existence inconvenient? I wanted to remind her of everything I had sacrificed, of the nights I worked late so she could go to college without loans, of the way I swallowed my own pains so she wouldn't feel caught in the middle of her parents' divorce. But I didn't. Instead, I put the phone down. Wednesday morning arrived too quickly. The day before Thanksgiving, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Peace. Calm. The kind that comes right before you make a decision you can't take back. I went for a walk, something I hadn't done in weeks. The air was cold and sharp, clearing my head. With every step, a thought grew stronger. Didn't want to sit at home feeling sorry for myself. I didn't want to wait for scraps of love. And I didn't want to teach my daughter that it was okay to erase people quietly. I realized something important. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. So I made a plan. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, but it was intentional. I spent Wednesday afternoon preparing, not food, but myself. I chose clothes I hadn't worn in a long time. Clothes that reminded me I was more than someone's ex-wife, more than someone's inconvenient parent. That evening, Emma called. "Mom," she said softly, "are you okay?" "Yes," I said truthfully. "You sound different." "I am." She hesitated. "I hope you're not mad." I smiled to myself. "I'm not mad, Emma." And for the first time, that wasn't a lie, because I had finally stopped waiting for an invitation that wasn't coming. And I had decided how I was going to spend Thanksgiving. They thought the story ended with my absence. They were wrong. Thanksgiving morning arrived quietly, no alarm clock, no rush, no turkey thawing in the sink or casserole dishes lining the counter. The silence felt unnatural at first, like waking up in a house that no longer belonged to you. I lay in bed longer than usual, listening to the faint sounds of cars passing outside, neighbors beginning their holiday routines. Somewhere nearby, families were laughing, cooking, arguing lightly over recipes and seating arrangements. I wasn't part of any of it, and for the first time, I didn't try to pretend that didn't hurt. I got up slowly and made myself coffee. The kitchen looked different without purpose, clean, empty. The dining table sat untouched, the chairs neatly pushed in, as if waiting for a gathering that would never happen. At around 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed, a group message, family Thanksgiving chat. I stared at the screen, confused. I didn't remember being added. Then the messages started pouring in. "Can't wait to see everyone later. Karen's turkey recipe looks amazing. Emma really outdid herself with the decor this year." Food photos followed, Emma standing in her kitchen, smiling. My ex-husband carving vegetables. Karen arranging centerpieces like she'd been doing it forever. I wasn't tagged, I wasn't mentioned, but somehow, I was included just enough to watch. My hands trembled as I exited the chat. A few minutes later, Emma texted me privately. "Did you get the group messages?" Yes, I did. "You look happy," I typed back. "I am," she replied. "I wish things were different." I didn't respond, because I was beginning to understand something she didn't yet realize. Wishing things were different means nothing when you're the one who chose how they are. Around noon, I got dressed. Not in pajamas, not in sweats. I put on a deep green dress, one Emma used to say, brought out my eyes. I fixed my hair carefully, put on lipstick I'd been saving for a special occasion. If Thanksgiving wasn't special enough for my family anymore, then I would make it special for myself. I drove aimlessly at first, letting the radio play softly, until I pulled into a small community center on the edge of town. A sign out front read, "Thanksgiving Community Lunch, all welcome." I sat in the car for a moment, my hand resting on the steering wheel. All welcome. The words hit me harder than they should have. Inside, the room buzzed with warmth, folding tables covered in tablecloths, volunteers moving between trays of food, elderly couples holding hands, single parents wrangling kids, strangers sitting side by side, sharing stories they'd never tell anywhere else. No one asked why I was alone. No one questioned my presence. A woman about my age smiled at me and said, "First time here." I nodded. Double quotes. "Well," she said warmly, "you picked a good day." We sat together and talked while we ate. She told me about losing her husband 2 years ago, about how holidays felt heavier now. I told her vaguely about my daughter and how family sometimes changes in ways you don't expect. She listened without judgment. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed again. A picture from Emma. The table, the food, everyone smiling. The caption read, "Family." Something inside me cracked, not painfully, but cleanly. I realized that what hurt wasn't being uninvited, it was being replaced, and told to accept it quietly. When dinner at the community center ended, I stayed behind to help clean up. It felt good to be useful, to be needed, to be appreciated for simply showing up. A volunteer coordinator thanked me and said, "We could use someone like you more often. Someone like you, not someone inconvenient, not someone who caused drama. Just someone." When I finally drove home, it was nearly dark. I passed streets glowing with lights, houses filled with noise and warmth. I wondered if Emma noticed my absence in her home the way I felt it in mine. I wondered if she felt relief, or if there was a quiet discomfort she couldn't name. Home. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the table alone. That was when my phone rang. That was my ex-husband. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Hey, he said awkwardly. I just wanted to check on you. Check on me. How thoughtful, I said evenly. He cleared his throat. Emma mentioned you didn't come. I wasn't invited. He sighed. It wasn't meant to be hurtful. I laughed softly. Funny how that works. There was a pause. Karen thought it would be best. He admitted. There it was. I see, I said. You know how sensitive she is about tension, he continued. She just wanted things peaceful. Peaceful for who? I asked. He didn't answer, ended the call politely, and sat in silence. And that's when the final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just my daughter's decision. It was influenced, shaped, encouraged, and my silence had made it easy. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. If I didn't change how this story was going, I would slowly disappear from it altogether. Thanksgiving wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The day after Thanksgiving always used to feel slow and cozy. Leftovers, lazy mornings, quiet reflection. This time, it felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm, the kind that doesn't destroy everything, but changes the landscape just enough that you know things will never look the same again. I woke up early, not because I needed to, but because sleep refused to come back. The house was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. I made tea instead of coffee, letting the steam fog up the window as I stood there, staring out at a street already returning to normal life. People walking dogs, cars heading to work, life moving on, and yet, something inside me had shifted. Around 9 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, Mom. That was it. No question, no curiosity, no acknowledgement. Just a sentence designed to check a box. I stared at the words longer than I should have. Then I typed, I did. I hope you did too, she replied with a heart emoji. That hurt more than silence. Later that morning, my sister Lisa stopped by unannounced. She took one look at my face and sighed. You're not okay. I'm functioning, I said. She shook her head. Emma told me you understood the situation. I let out a bitter laugh. That's not the same thing as agreeing. Lisa sat down heavily at the table. I saw the photos. So did I. She looked happy. I know. Lisa hesitated. Karen's been very involved. I raised an eyebrow. Involved how? Helping Emma plan things, giving advice, suggesting boundaries. Boundaries. The word echoed in my mind. Lisa leaned forward. She's positioning herself, as what? I asked. The reasonable one. I nodded slowly, at my expense. Lisa reached for my hand. You don't have to disappear to keep the peace. That sentence stayed with me long after she left. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old photo albums, not digital ones, real albums, heavy, worn, filled with years of proof. There I was, holding newborn Emma in the hospital bed. There I was at her first birthday, cake smeared everywhere. There I was alone in the audience, at her school play, while her father was running late. I wasn't imagining my role in her life. I had lived it. That evening, I received another call. This time, it was Karen. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I answered. Hi, she said brightly. I just wanted to reach out about, I asked, Thanksgiving. She replied, I hope you didn't feel excluded. I almost admired the audacity. I was excluded, I said calmly. Well, she said carefully, we just wanted a low-stress environment for Emma. There it was again. Emma as the excuse. You don't get to decide my place in my daughter's life, I said quietly. She paused. I didn't mean it like that, but you acted like it. Karen's tone shifted slightly. I think you might be holding on to a lot of resentment. I smiled to myself. I think you're confusing boundaries with erasure. Silence. Then she said, we're just trying to move forward. So am I replied. We hung up shortly after. I felt strangely lighter, because for the first time, I hadn't apologized for existing. The next morning, Emma showed up at my door. Unannounced. I froze when I saw her through the window. She looked nervous, younger somehow. I opened the door. Hey, she said softly. Hey, she stepped inside, glancing around like she wasn't sure she still belonged there. We sat at the table, the same one that had been empty the day before. I didn't realize how upset you were, she said finally. I told you, I replied gently. I just didn't beg. She looked down. Karen thought it would be best. I met her eyes. And what did you think? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I didn't want to choose sides, she whispered. I nodded slowly. By not choosing, you did. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. We sat in silence. Then I said something I had never said before. I won't compete for space in your life. She looked up sharply. I'm your mother. I don't need to be invited like a guest. Her shoulders shook. I'm not asking you to cut anyone out, I continued, but I won't make myself smaller to make others comfortable. She cried openly now. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I reached across the table and held her hand. You start by being honest, I said, even when it's uncomfortable. She nodded as she left. She turned back and said, I love you. I love you too, I replied, but love alone wasn't enough anymore. Respect had to follow, and whether she realized it or not, something fundamental had changed. I had stopped waiting, and that was going to force everyone else to adjust. After Emma left that day, the house felt different, not emptier, clearer. For the first time since the divorce, I wasn't bracing myself for the next disappointment. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in my head, or wondering how to say things gently enough to keep everyone else comfortable. I had finally said the quiet part out loud, and once words like that leave your mouth, they don't go back in. The next few days were oddly peaceful. No calls, no texts, no forced check-ins pretending everything was fine. I went to work, cooked simple meals, went on walks, and slept better than I had in weeks. But peace has a way of making noise elsewhere. On Tuesday evening, my phone rang. It was my ex-husband again. I let it ring longer this time before answering. Hey, he said, his voice cautious. Emma told me you two talked. Yes, I replied. She seemed emotional. She was honest, I said. There's a difference. He sighed. I think things got misunderstood. Nothing was misunderstood, I said calmly. Things were avoided. There was a pause. Karen feels like you're blaming her, he said. I almost laughed. I didn't know accountability felt like blame. I replied. That's not fair, he snapped, then quickly softened his tone. She was just trying to help Emma by removing me. I asked. She didn't remove you. She decided where I belonged. I corrected, and so did Emma. Another pause, longer this time. You know Emma hates conflict, he said. So do I replied. But I hate erasure more. That ended the conversation, and something interesting happened afterward. No guilt, no second-guessing. Just a quiet certainty that I had finally stopped bending myself into a shape that fit everyone else. A few days later, I ran into Emma again, this time at a cafe near her office. She looked surprised to see me, but she smiled. Can I sit? She asked. Of course. We talked about neutral things at first. Work, weather, her wedding planning. But underneath it all, there was tension. The kind that comes when both people know something important is waiting to be said. Finally, she took a breath. Karen thinks you're pulling away, she said carefully. I am, I replied. Her eyes widened. Why? Because I spent years reaching, I said gently, and no one noticed until I stopped. She stared down at her coffee. She feels like you don't like her, Emma said. I don't trust her, I replied. That's different. Emma looked uncomfortable. She's trying. So am I said, but I don't get applause for it. Emma sighed. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle. I leaned forward. You're not in the middle, Emma. You're at the center. She frowned. That's worse. It's honest, I said, and adulthood often is. She didn't respond right away. Then she said something that surprised me. She keeps saying you make things about the past. I smiled sadly. The past is where patterns begin. Emma looked at me, really looked at me, like she was seeing something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. I didn't think uninviting you would hurt this much, she admitted. I know, I said, because you didn't imagine me sitting alone. She swallowed hard. That night, I received a message from Karen. It wasn't angry, it was polished. I think we should clear the air, for Emma's sake. I read it twice, then once more, and finally I replied, I agree, but not at the cost of my place. She responded quickly, no. One is trying to take your place. I stared at the screen, then stopped standing in it. I typed. No response. The following weekend, Emma invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. Mattered. We talked openly about childhood, about the divorce, about the pressure she felt to keep everyone happy, about how Karen had slowly positioned herself as the calm, reasonable voice while framing me as emotional, difficult, and tied to old wounds. I didn't notice it happening, Emma admitted. It felt gradual. That's how replacement works, I said quietly. She flinched. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't, I said, but you will lose access to me if I'm only welcome when I'm quiet. She nodded slowly. I need time, she said. Take it, I replied, but don't mistake my patience for permission. As we stood to leave, she hugged me tightly, longer than usual, and I realized something important. This wasn't a dramatic confrontation story. This was a slow awakening. And awakenings make people uncomfortable, especially the ones who benefited from your silence. Karen didn't message me again after that, but I could feel her presence everywhere, in Emma's hesitations, in carefully worded sentences, in the way plans were now still being figured out. And that was fine, because, for the first time, I wasn't waiting for access, I was defining it, and the next decision, the one that would truly change everything, was already forming. The message came on a Thursday morning. Not from Emma. From Karen. I knew that alone meant something had changed. I stared at my phone for a full minute before opening it, already sensing the careful wording waiting on the other side. Emma wants to host a small family dinner next weekend. She thought it might help everyone move forward. Let me know if you're comfortable joining. Comfortable.join. Not invited. Not welcome. Join. As if this were a committee meeting and not a family. I took a deep breath and set the phone down. I made breakfast, washed the dishes, folded laundry, all the things I used to do to avoid discomfort. But this time, avoidance didn't work. The message sat there, quiet but heavy. When I finally picked the phone back up, I typed one sentence. If Emma wants to invite me, she can ask me herself. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then Karen replied, she didn't want to put pressure on you. I almost laughed. Pressure. Being asked directly was pressure now. I'm her mother, I typed. A conversation isn't pressure. No response. 2 hours later, Emma called. Hi, Mom. Hi, she sounded nervous. Karen mentioned you might come to dinner. I said you could ask me yourself. Oh, she said softly. I didn't realize she had already reached out. I closed my eyes. She did, I said evenly. With conditions. Conditions? Emma asked quickly. There aren't any conditions. Then why wasn't the invitation from you? I asked. She hesitated. Because things are complicated. I nodded slowly. Only because everyone keeps making them that way. She sighed. I just wanted a calm evening. So did I replied. But calm built on silence doesn't last. There was a pause. Then she said, will you come? Yes, I said. If I'm invited, not managed. Another pause. I'm inviting you, she said. Please come. That word, please, mattered more than she knew. I'll be there, I replied. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday. 2 days. 2 days for nerves to build, stories to be rewritten, expectations to form. I spent Friday evening preparing emotionally, not socially. I wasn't going to rehearse speeches or plan confrontations. I wasn't there to prove anything. I was there to observe. Saturday arrived colder than expected. When I pulled into Emma's driveway, my hands were steady, a detail I noticed with surprise. The house looked warm, lights glowing softly inside. Through the window, I saw movement. I knocked. Emma opened the door immediately. She hugged me tightly. I'm glad you came, she whispered. So am I said truthfully. Inside, the atmosphere was polite, not warm, not cold, curated. My ex-husband nodded at me, offering an awkward smile. Karen stood near the kitchen, composed, gracious, perfectly pleasant. Hi, she said. I'm really glad you could make it. I met her eyes. So am I. We sat, we ate, we talked about safe things, work, weather, schedules, but under the surface, everything pulsed. At one point, Karen laughed and said, isn't it nice when things are simple? I set my fork down gently. Simple, for who? I asked calmly. The table went quiet. Emma's eyes widened. Karen smiled tightly. I just meant peaceful. Peace is honesty, I replied, not avoidance. My ex-husband cleared his throat. Let's not turn this into something. I nodded. I'm clarifying. Karen leaned back slightly. No one's trying to exclude you. I looked at her. Then don't speak for my daughter. Emma inhaled sharply. I can speak for myself, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. I invited my mom, Emma continued, because I wanted her here. Karen blinked. And I don't want anyone managing my relationships anymore, Emma added. The silence that followed was thick. Karen smiled. but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, I just care about harmony. I care about truth, I said softly. The rest of the dinner passed quietly, but something fundamental had shifted. After dessert, Emma walked me to the door. I didn't know how to say that before, she admitted, but I meant it. I know, I said. You're learning. Karen didn't hug me goodbye. That was fine, because I didn't need gestures anymore. I needed clarity, and I got it. Later that night, Emma texted me, "Thank you for coming. I see things differently now." I stared at the message, heart heavy but steady. This wasn't a victory. It was a turning point, and turning points don't scream, they settle. And I knew one thing for certain. Karen had felt the shift, and she wasn't going to let it go quietly. The shift after that dinner was subtle, but undeniable. Emma didn't announce anything. She didn't confront anyone dramatically. She simply changed. Her texts came directly to me again, instead of through someone else. She asked my opinion on things she used to decide without me. Small things at first, recipes, work stress, wedding details, but each question felt like a door. Reopening. And every door reopening meant another one, closing somewhere else. Karen noticed. I knew she did because her tone changed. Where she once sounded warm and accommodating, now there was a careful edge, politeness sharpened, just enough to remind me it wasn't accidental. She stopped messaging me altogether. Instead, she spoke around me. Through Emma, through my ex, through concern. One afternoon, Emma called me, her voice tight. "Karen thinks I'm pulling away," she said. "Are you?" I asked. "Yes," she admitted, but I didn't realize how obvious it was. "Distance becomes obvious when someone is used to access," I replied. Emma sighed. "She says I'm changing." "You are," I said gently. "That's not a bad thing." A few days later, my ex-husband called. Not angry, not defensive, confused. Double quotes. "Karen feels iced out," he said. "She doesn't understand why Emma isn't leaning on her the way she used to." I leaned back in my chair. Because Emma's learning where support actually comes from," I replied. He was quiet for a moment. "You think Karen was overstepping?" "I think she was positioning," I said, "and now the position isn't secure." "That's not fair," he muttered. "Neither was Thanksgiving," I said evenly. He didn't argue. That silence told me more than words ever could. The real turning point came 2 weeks later. Emma invited me to join her for wedding dress shopping. Just me, no stepmother, no group chat, no buffering presence. When she asked, she sounded nervous. "I don't want this to become a thing," she said quickly. I want you there." "I'd love to be there," I replied, and I meant it. The boutique was quiet and elegant, soft lighting, rows of white gowns, mirrors that showed truth whether you wanted it or not. Emma stepped out in the first dress and immediately looked at me. Not at her phone, not at the sales consultant. "Ebony, what do you think?" she asked. My throat tightened. "You look like yourself," I said softly. "That's what matters." She smiled, a real smile, and nodded. After the third dress, she sat beside me, suddenly emotional. "I forgot how safe this feels," she admitted. "Safe?" I asked. "With you," she said. "You don't make me perform." I didn't respond, I just held her hand. Later that evening, Karen texted Emma. "Not me. Heard you went dress shopping. I would have loved to come." Emma showed me the message before responding. "What should I say?" she asked. I took a breath. "Say the truth." So she did. "Mom and I went together. It felt right." Karen replied a few minutes later. "I just hope I'm not being pushed out." Emma stared at the screen, torn. I said nothing. She typed slowly. "No one is pushing you out, but I need space to reconnect with my mom." Karen didn't reply. That silence lasted days, then weeks, and when Karen finally spoke again, it wasn't to Emma. It was to me. She called one evening, her voice controlled but strained. "I think we need to talk," she said. "I agree," I replied. We met at a neutral place, a cafe neither of us frequented. No home advantage, no audience. She sat stiffly across from me. "I feel like you're undermining me," she said. I blinked once. "By existing," she frowned. "By influencing Emma." I smiled slightly. "I'm her mother. Influence isn't a strategy, it's a relationship." "She's distant now," Karen said. "She used to tell me everything, and now she doesn't," I replied. "That's not something I took." Karen crossed her arms. "You're making her choose?" "No," I said calmly. "I stopped letting her choose silence over truth." She looked at me, frustrated. You don't see how hard this is for me. I do, I said. You're losing control. Her mouth tightened. I just wanted peace, she snapped. So did I replied. But peace that costs someone their place isn't peace. It's convenience. She stood abruptly. I won't compete with you. You already did, I said quietly. And you lost the moment Emma remembered who she was with me. Karen left without another word. When Emma heard about the meeting, she didn't panic. She nodded slowly. She's scared, Emma said. Yes, I replied, because influence without permission feels like power until it doesn't. Emma took a deep breath. I don't want to hurt anyone. I know, I said, but avoiding discomfort doesn't prevent damage. It just delays it. That night, Emma sent a message to the family group chat. I love you all, but I need to say something clearly. My relationship with my mom is not negotiable. No one replied, but something cracked open, and cracks, once visible, can't be unseen. Because when control starts to slip, people reveal who they are, and the next move wasn't going to come from me. It was going to come from Karen. After Emma sent that message to the family group chat, the silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. No replies didn't mean no reaction. It meant people were recalculating, measuring words, rewriting internal narratives they'd relied on for years. Karen, especially. I didn't hear from her right away, but I felt her presence in other ways. Subtle shifts, quiet ripples that told me something was brewing. Emma noticed it too. She's being overly nice, Emma said one afternoon when we met for coffee. Like she's trying too hard. That usually happens when someone realizes their influence is slipping, I replied. Emma frowned. I don't want to believe she's manipulative. I didn't say she was, I said gently. I said she was uncomfortable. A week later, Emma called me late at night. She sounded shaken. Mom, I think you were right. My heart tightened. What happened? She hesitated. Karen was talking to one of my bridesmaids today. She didn't know I was nearby. I stayed silent. She said I've been emotionally unstable lately and that wedding stress might be making me regress into old attachments. Old attachments. Emma's voice cracked. She was talking about you. I closed my eyes. What did you do? I asked softly. I walked in, Emma said, and she froze. I could picture it perfectly. What did she say? I asked. She laughed it off, Emma replied, said she was worried about me, that she thought I was letting guilt drive my decisions. And I asked her why my relationship with my own mother needed a diagnosis. Silence fell between us. She told me she was just trying to protect me, Emma continued. From emotional pressure, I exhaled slowly. And how did that make you feel? Emma swallowed, like a child. There it was. The thing Karen never meant to say out loud. That night, Emma came over. She didn't announce it. She just showed up, eyes red, shoulders tense. I feel stupid, she said as soon as she sat down. I defended her for so long. You weren't stupid, I said. You were hopeful. She nodded, tears spilling. She made it seem like you were fragile, like I had to manage you. I reached for her hand. I never asked you to manage me. I know, she whispered. That's what scares me. We sat there quietly. Then, Emma said something I hadn't expected. She told my dad she thinks you're trying to reclaim control over me. I let out a slow breath. Control looks different when you're used to being centered. Emma shook her head. I don't feel controlled by you. I feel grounded. That word settled into my chest like warmth. Grounded. 2 days later, my ex-husband called. His voice was strained. I think we need to talk about Karen, he said. I didn't say finally, but I thought it. She's upset, he continued. She feels like she's being pushed out of Emma's life. Emma isn't an object to be placed, I replied. I know, he said quietly. I didn't realize how much she was influencing things. I stayed calm. Influence is invisible when it aligns with convenience. He sighed. She says, you've turned Emma against her. I laughed softly. Emma opened her eyes. That's different. There was a long pause. Then he said, she's angry with me for not backing her more. That told me everything. Karen wasn't losing Emma. She was losing control. And control, when threatened, often turns sharp. A few days later, Karen sent Emma a long message. Emma showed it to me, hands trembling. It was full of concern, paragraphs about emotional safety, boundaries, unhealthy attachments, and the need to move forward. But buried in the language was something unmistakable. An ultimatum. I just need to know where I stand. Karen had written, because I can't stay in a situation where I feel undermined. Emma stared at the screen. She wants me to choose, she whispered. I nodded slowly. She's framing it as self-protection. What do I do? Emma asked. I met her eyes. Tell the truth, without anger. Emma typed carefully. You stand as my stepmother, not as a replacement parent. My relationship with my mom doesn't undermine you. If it does, that's something you need to reflect on. Karen replied almost instantly. I never tried to replace anyone. Emma responded. Then, stop acting threatened by my mother. No response came after that. Days passed. Then, something unexpected happened. Karen didn't escalate. She withdrew. She stopped attending planning meetings. She stopped inserting opinions. She stopped checking in. The absence felt heavy, not peaceful, but unsettled. My ex-husband visited me one evening, unannounced. He looked older, tired. Double quotes. I think I messed up, he said quietly. I poured him tea and sat across from him. I let Karen frame things because it was easier, he admitted. You were always strong. You didn't demand. That didn't mean I didn't matter, I said. I know, he said. I see that now. That acknowledgement didn't heal everything, but it mattered. The final moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Emma called me, her voice steady but emotional. I talked to Karen, she said. Really talked, and I asked. She admitted she was afraid of being sidelined. Emma said, of not being needed. I nodded. That fear can make people controlling. She asked me if I loved you more. Emma whispered. My chest tightened. What did you say? I asked. I said love isn't a competition, Emma replied. And if she needs to win to feel secure, then something's wrong. I smiled through tears. Emma exhaled. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't expecting honesty, I said. No, Emma agreed. She was expecting compliance. That night, Emma sent me a message. Thank you for not disappearing when it would have been easier. I stared at the screen, heartful, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay visible, and when masks fall, what's left is truth, even if it takes time for everyone else to catch up. After Karen stepped back, the family didn't suddenly become peaceful. It became honest, and honesty has a way of rearranging everything. There were fewer group messages, fewer forced check-ins, conversations slowed, deepened, and sometimes stopped altogether. People didn't know what to say when the old dynamics no longer worked. Emma noticed it first. It feels like everyone's walking carefully, she said one afternoon, as we folded laundry together at my house, something we hadn't done since she was a teenager. They are, I replied, because the rules changed. What rules? She asked. The ones no one admits exist, I said. She nodded slowly. Karen used to speak for the room. Yes, I said. Now no one's sure who does. Emma exhaled. I don't like how quiet it is. I know, I said gently, but quiet is where people hear themselves. The wedding planning continued, slower, simpler, stripped of unnecessary voices. Emma no longer asked for permission to include me. She assumed my presence. That alone felt monumental. One evening she asked, would you help me with the seating chart? I smiled softly. Of course. As we worked, she hesitated over one table. Dad and Karen, she murmured. I waited. She doesn't want to sit near you, Emma said quietly. I looked at her calmly. That's okay. Emma frowned. It shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be, I said. Comfort grows over time. You can't force it. She nodded, relieved. Thank you for not making this harder. I met her eyes. I stopped making myself smaller. That doesn't mean I want to make things heavy. That distinction mattered. A week later, my ex-husband came by again. He looked more reflective than defensive now. Karen moved out for a few days. He admitted. I didn't react. She says she needs space to think, he continued, about her role. That's healthy, I said. He looked surprised. You're not angry. I already was, I replied. Now I'm clear. He sighed. I wish I'd seen this sooner. Maybe you weren't ready, I said. People see when it becomes unavoidable. He nodded. She's struggling with not being central. I met his gaze. She was never meant to be. That night, Emma called me. I feel guilty, she confessed. About what? I asked. About not noticing sooner. About letting things get this far. I paused. Guilt means you care, but don't confuse it with responsibility. She was quiet. I didn't protect you, she said softly. You didn't attack me, I replied. That matters too. But I didn't choose you, she whispered. I felt that old ache, but it didn't consume me anymore. You chose comfort, I said gently. Most people do, until they learn better. She inhaled shakily. I'm learning. Yes, I said. You are. The following weekend, something unexpected happened. Karen called me. Not to accuse, not to manage, not to defend. She sounded tired. I don't think I understood my place, she said slowly. I didn't interrupt. I thought being needed meant being close. She continued, but I see now that I crossed lines. I let the silence hold. I don't expect forgiveness, she added. I just didn't want to pretend anymore. I respected that. I don't need apologies, I said. I need consistency. She exhaled. I can work on that. After the call ended, I didn't feel victorious. I felt settled, because apologies without awareness are empty. But awareness, even late matters. Emma noticed the shift immediately. She called you? She asked. Yes. What did she say? That she's thinking, I replied. Emma nodded. That's new. Thinking changes people, I said, if they let it. As the wedding approached, Emma leaned into me more openly. She asked me to help choose flowers. She asked me to hold her veil. She asked me to walk with her during fittings, not as a symbol. As a mother. One evening, as we sat quietly, she said something that made my chest tighten. I don't want to lose myself again. I looked at her. Then don't ignore your discomfort. That's where truth lives. She nodded. The day before the wedding, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for staying." I held her back just as tightly. "Thank you for seeing me," I replied. Karen attended the rehearsal dinner. She kept her distance, but she was respectful, and that mattered more than warmth. Later that night, my ex-husband approached me. "I never thanked you," he said quietly. "For what? For not turning this into a war." I smiled faintly. I didn't need a battlefield. I needed a boundary. He nodded slowly. The truth was, not everyone changed, but everyone adjusted. And that's sometimes the most realistic ending. On the morning of the wedding, Emma sat beside me, nervous and glowing. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "So am I replied. Not because I won, but because I never left. And that, more than any invitation, was the real ending of Thanksgiving. Or so I thought. Because life has a way of circling back, and the final chapter wasn't over yet. The wedding had passed. The chaos, the anxiety, the small victories, the long conversations, all of it now existed as memory. A weight lifted, but also a lesson anchored deep in my chest. For the first time in months, the house was quiet in a way that didn't press against my ears. I sat in the living room with a cup of tea, reflecting on everything that had happened since that fateful Thanksgiving. Emma had grown. So had I. So had my awareness of who truly mattered and who didn't. But life, I knew, had a strange habit of looping lessons into holidays. Thanksgiving was approaching again. 1 year later, a few days before, Emma had called me. "Mom," she said softly, "I was thinking, Thanksgiving this year, will you come?" I smiled quietly, letting the pause stretch. "Yes, I'd like that." She laughed lightly. "I meant, actually come, as in, we're hosting together." My heart lifted. "Together, yes," she said, her voice brimming with hope. "I want this to be our tradition. You and me, no tension, no silences, no manipulations." I felt a warmth spread across me, not relief, not triumph, just satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you stood your ground, held your place, and refused to disappear. The day before Thanksgiving, Emma and I met to prepare. She was cooking her grandmother's stuffing recipe, and I was chopping vegetables, a task I had always loved and always done for her. "I can't believe we're doing this together," she said, smiling. "I feel free." "Free is a good feeling," I said, "because it comes from honesty, not from others' approval." The house smelled of herbs, roasted vegetables, and laughter. For once, it wasn't hollow or forced. Every time Karen or my ex-husband tried to check in with helpful suggestions, Emma politely declined. Boundaries were no longer whispered or implied. They were spoken aloud and respected. Thanksgiving morning arrived, bright and cold. I brought the pumpkin pies Emma had requested, and we set the table together, side by side, not a third party dictating where forks or plates should go. My ex-husband and Karen arrived later. But the atmosphere was different. Karen tried to smile, tried to interject advice, and I noticed it immediately. The difference wasn't in her words but in her tone. She was careful, cautious, respectful, almost as if walking on ice. And that's all that mattered. Dinner began. Emma sat between me and Karen, a quiet assertion that this was our night, not someone else's drama. I watched her. She radiated confidence, warmth, and ease, all things that had been overshadowed last year by silent manipulations and unspoken expectations. Conversations flowed naturally, laughter echoed from the corners of the dining room. I noticed Karen softened, realizing that influence could not be forced. My ex-husband, finally quiet and observant, followed Emma's lead. At one point, Emma raised her glass. To family, she said, to honesty, and to traditions that matter. I looked at her, my daughter, and felt a wave of pride. To family, I echoed. We clinked glasses. Later, after the dishes were cleared, Emma hugged me tightly. I don't know what I would have done if you had stayed away, she whispered. You would have missed the point, I said. What point? That love is not measured by invitations or convenience. It's measured by presence, honesty, and standing firm. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Karen approached quietly. I see now, she said softly. I didn't realize how much I was imposing. I nodded gently. Awareness is the first step. She smiled faintly. I'll try to do better. I accepted that, not as permission for her to act freely, but as acknowledgement that power shifted and it had to be respected. As the evening wound down, Emma and I sat side by side on the couch, exhausted but happy. She leaned against me. You know, she said, I was scared last year that I had to choose. You didn't, I replied. You just needed to see it clearly. I'm glad I did, she whispered. I held her close. That night, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning or losing. That it was about presence. It was about showing up, not shrinking, not disappearing, and refusing to let anyone erase the bond that had always existed between a mother and her. I slept deeply, fully aware that I had survived erasure, reclaimed my place, and had built a bridge with Emma, strong enough to carry both of us, regardless of anyone else's agenda. Sometimes, the most dramatic stories aren't told in arguments or tears. Sometimes, they are told in quiet decisions. The decision to show up, the decision to stay visible, and the decision to honor truth above comfort. That Thanksgiving, for the first time in years, the table was complete. Not because everyone agreed, not because everyone liked it, but because the people who mattered most were present, and that, I realized, was enough.